Ian's Cars.
Right, well, we're back again. This is the new swivel ball. We've installed the taper roller bearing outer shells in there and in there, top and bottom. You can press these in, or you can very gently tap them in with a hammer until they seat properly on the edges inside there. The next part of the operation for this is to install the seal. You can see we've already done it, but we'll demonstrate how to do it. So this is what we do. We put it on the anvil bit of the vise. We make sure that we've got a foam pad that's not going to cause any dents or any burrs or anything. And you place the seal in, and in our instance it's already in, and you gently tap it all the way around till you get it square. Then you use a socket like this, which is the correct diameter. You fit it very carefully over the socket, and again you just tap it just lightly until the seal is seated onto its seating surface and it's nice and flush inside there. So that's that bit done anyway. So the next part is we're going to install the swivel ball into the hub housing as such. So just bear with us for a little while. When we've got set up, we'll come back to you and we'll show you how we're going to do that. Just cleaned up all these bolts, and these bolts hold the swivel ball housing on that we're going to fit to the axle. It's imperative these are clean because they have Loctite on, and it's also imperative that where the bolt goes into the axle is perfectly clean as well. So I'll just show you how we're going to apply a little bit of Loctite. You don't need much of this stuff. Just a little blob like that around about the middle of the thread, and that's all you really need. If you put too much on, it can create problems next time you come to pull it apart. Right, okay, we've come to the point where we're going to fit the swivel ball assembly, which we've built up, into the swivel ball housing here. It's imperative you get this bit right, because you can really be in trouble if you don't, because you're going to have to take it all apart. You've got to make sure that this particular plate is the right way up and the right way to fit the bolt holes in here, and that retains the swivel ball seal. So we'll very carefully take this and we'll place it over here. We've already installed the taper roller bearing and we've lubricated it. Never put things together dry, always put plenty of lubrication. We've used some of the one-shot grease for that, because that's what's going to fill up the hub anyway. We've also installed that bearing there, and we've greased that. Now we're going to carefully install this into the hub. A bit tricky, got to make sure that bearing doesn't jump out. Okay, that's in. That seems to be going okay. And then that bearing there will be located by this pin, and this has got shims on, and we'll come to this later when we've got it on the vehicle, and we'll show you how we set this up with a preload on the swivel pins. Right, let me just jiggle this around to make contact with that. There we go, that way in nice and easily. We're just going to put 2 bolts in temporarily for the moment, just to secure that assembly so that we can get it onto the vehicle. Just move that up slightly. There we go. Just going to locate these at this point. We don't need to be doing them up or anything, so we've got to set all this up when we've got it on the vehicle. Okay, right, so there's that point dealt with, and then now you can see the swivel ball's actually moving as it should do, and everything's beginning to look like a hub again. Right, the next thing we will do, make sure your seal is in perfect condition. There's nothing there, no bits of grip. Make sure the seal is properly seated. Put that back over there and make sure you line everything up. And then you take these very small 8mm headed bolts and you put them in one at a time. Okay, well that's as far as we need to go at this stage. What we'll do is we'll get it buttoned up, and then we'll get it prepared, and then we'll get it ready to go onto the vehicle. We're we're about to fit the swivel hub assembly now. We put a gasket on there and we put a very small amount of Vaseline, or you can use grease if you wish, just to make sure that gasket stays in place while we offer the assembly up to the car. Right, okay, well these bolts are installed, but we've slackened them off, and we'll explain the reason behind that in a minute when we get to the point where we're going to do the preload on these bearings.
Which bolts were those?
These are the bolts that locate this assembly, the whole assembly, to the axle of the vehicle.
Right.
So we're going to just show putting a little bit of Loctite onto there, only around the centre of the bolt. We only need to get it round there. Right, that's enough on there. Don't want to put too much, because otherwise if you've got to get it all out again at a later date, it can be a problem. Anyway, that's it for the moment. We'll carry on, Loctite these up, the rest of the bolts up, and we'll show you how we're going to fit it to the vehicle. We've offered the hub up assembly up to the axle with the gasket in place. You can see we haven't got it located fully. Now what we did in advance is we cleaned all these bolts out, so that threads out, so that we can quickly wind those up. As you can see, we've got a couple in there and they're going in very nicely. I can just run that one in with my fingers there, look. We've also got the Loctite on there as well. Main reason why we're concentrating on this is because although there is a specific torque setting for these bolts, we haven't got the sophisticated torque wrench that will allow us to go in there and torque them up. So we're going to torque them up by hand, but to make sure they don't come loose, we've applied all the Loctite as they would have done in the factory. This is the point where we need to tighten these bolts up now. As I said earlier, we haven't got a sophisticated torque wrench to put in there so that we can do it, because there is a limitation of space there. So what we've come up with is the way we undo them as well, is to tighten them up initially first with this single spanner, and then use, this is a 14mm, then use a 17mm spanner and just hook it on.
If you can.
Like that, okay? That would be to undo, sorry. I need to do up. That's
Yep.
it, like that, okay? Got it in the end, we'll get there. And then simply pull it up to as tight in one good heave like that, and that should be good enough to settle the bolt in. We'll just run through the rest of the bolts again to make sure that they're okay. We'll go around in a clockwise motion. That's tight. 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 And so on. Okay, so now's the point that we come to set the preload on the top and bottom swivel bearings, which is like that determines the amount of drag on those bearings basically. Now we've got a set amount of shims in there at the moment that we've roughly calculated, but this is how we actually do it. We wind this back nearly all the way, and this is why we leave these bolts loose here on the seal area, so that the seal isn't clamped up tight to the ball. That will affect what we're going to do in a minute. We then hook this spring balance on, and we need it to show approximately 2 kilos before it starts moving. This one's going to take a little bit more than that. Okay, that's averaging about 3.25 kilos. So what we need to do now is, to make the drag less on that, we need to add some more shims to stop the compression of those two bearings. So we'll carry on, we'll put a few more shims in and we'll show you the next measurement. We've added the correct amount of shims to put the correct preload on the top and bottom swivel ball bearings, and now we're going to test the resistance again on here. So we use the spring balance as we did before. We just simply hook it onto there, we put that right back to there, and we pull at approximately 90 degrees all the time, and you can see, oh, I'll do that again, that didn't quite work as planned. Right, let's be a little bit more careful this time. Rushing. Right, there we go. We're pulling again, and we should have 1.5 to 2 kilo load on there, which is fine. That's perfect. I'm well happy with that. Well, now we're at the stage where we need to fit the new stub axle. We've already gone ahead and we've installed the roller bearing there and the seal and thrust washer. Now that's on, ready to go on, but we are doing the other side, so I will explain it now so that you can see exactly how we do it. So we take the stub axle like that, we place it in position there with a couple of blocks of wood. Make sure you've always got that on there protecting the end of the thread, and then we simply just get a tool which has got an angle onto it, locate it onto the seal, and give it a few sharp swift. Oh, that's disappeared onto the floor. Anyway, we don't need that, but see, there's the seal that's come out. Just have a little bit of a closer look at that. Yep. Now, so that's basically the way we get that out. Now we're going to clean up the inside of this and just have a good inspection to make sure everything's good, make sure the surfaces are good, clean and everything. And then what we'll do is we'll come back to you and we'll show you how to install the seal and the needle roller bearing. This bush here literally just taps on. It's only a very light press fit, so that can just go on, but that's already there, so we don't have to worry about it. As I say, we installed it on the new one and it was just literally a very light tap and it went straight on. Anyway, without further ado, we'll leave you there for a few minutes and we'll come back and we'll show you when we've got the setup how to install the roller bearing and seal. Okay, so this comes to the point now where we've cleaned up this stub axle. We've already said this isn't the actual one because we've already done it. This is the one off the other side. Now this seal goes in one way only, and when you take it out you've got to observe that is the correct way to go in. So we'll just pop that into there for the moment. Just get it seated down by your fingers, and then we'll very carefully make sure there's nothing, no grit or anything in the socket or anything like that. We'll then gently just square that up, and then just very gently give it a nice tap. Maybe use a slightly heavier hammer, it's slightly easier to do. Until you hear that sound change and you know you're there. Don't go too mad, because what you can do is you can damage the casing of the seal. There we go. So that's that installed. Now we need to be looking at installing the roller bearing. So this goes in either way, there's no specific way of this. So this is just literally a needle roller bearing. We're just going to literally put that in there like that, and then we're going to put the CV joint. We're going to use an old CV joint to help put that into the, and make sure it goes in very carefully because there's a new seal in there. That's it, lovely. So it's like that. Right, now when we do this, we've got to get the vice so that we're resting, not gripping the CV joint at all, we're just resting on two of those flanges of the nut. Okay, and now we need to put a piece of wood on top of there like that. It helps us out. We just need to gently drive that in. That's down, isn't it? As high as it is. It's down. Yep, that's all the way down. Now, that needs to go a little bit more, that bearing. And we'll just always make sure you don't put a dirty finger in there. Make sure that no, that's perfectly okay. That's not damaged that outer race in any way. quick inspection of the glasses. Yep, that's all fine as it is. Right, now we've got to push that bearing in a little bit further, another couple of millimetres. So what we do, we get ourselves a G-clamp up there, put that into the vise like that. Just get that in nice and tight. Then we select a socket that will fit just nice and neatly in there. Okay, just slightly smaller than that. We put that over the end of there. Drop that. Maybe we just need to spindle it in there. My assistant is. Just back that off a little bit, maybe. I'll tell you what it might be. It might be this nut actually.
Like watching paint dry.
I know. In a minute there'll be a picture of a man with a roller painting the wall. Never mind. A little bit of tension, see what we've got. Yeah, just felt the bearing go in a little bit then. Yeah, that's going in quite nicely now. Okay, so at this point we seem to have lost our audio, so I will talk you through this. We have actually got the drive shaft in the vise to clean it and to do a thorough inspection and to take it to the next stage. Okay, so we've got that nice and clean. We've inspected this to make sure that the oil seal will run on here okay. If this is all pitted, scored or ridged or anything, then unfortunately the shaft is scrap. Also that applies to these splines. If these splines are really badly sharpened up and everything's not very good there, then obviously you're going to have to put a new shaft on. This is the important bit, this small spacer. People tend to forget this and then wonder why the CB doesn't fit on properly. So that must go on first. There isn't any specific way, it's just a standard thing. We've then got a new clip that I'm getting to here. Let's get it out of the bag. Hopefully we won't lose it trying to put it on. It's a little bit tight, but they do go on.
What's that for?
Glasses on, have a quick look. That's perfectly in position. Yep, heard it go click on, and that just turns around nicely. Okay, so the next stage is to fit the constant velocity joint. Now what we should be able to do, we'll just poke a bit of that grease around there so that we can see the splines. It makes it a little bit easier for installation. We should be able to enter with that nice and square so it locates on there, and then sometimes we can just push them on, sometimes they no, this one's not going to go. I'm just going to go across to my bench over there and I'll go and get a hammer. It's an appropriate copper hammer. Right, we'll just remount that. Try and keep this as square as possible, and usually with one nice sharp tap they will go on. Like that. Just a little bit further. Right, that's nice, that's on there. just double check that. Got a couple more little light taps. Right, okay. That shaft is now ready to install. We're just gonna check a few things out on the vehicle first. So we're quite happy with that. Okay, we're here installing the drive shaft now. This is quite important. We must put some kind of grease or Vaseline on that particular area because that's where a grease seal runs, and it'll help put it in and avoid any damage to the seal that's up in the axle there. Right, this can be a little bit tricky, but there is a little knack to this. You've got to find the sweet spot, so you've got to kind of like get the CV like that so it's pivoting a bit, and then you'll feel it. I'll show you that. There you go, and then it goes. There is a knack to it. It does take a bit of fiddling. We've done quite a few of them, so we get used to them over the years. One thing I will also say is you must have this hub in the straight head position. It does help when you do that. Okay, so that's the drive shaft installation. Now we're going to go on to the installation of the stub axle. Okay, so at the point now where we're going to fit the stub axle, as we previously said, we've installed the new roller bearing, the new seal in there. We also got a brand new gasket on there. We put a very slight smear of Vaseline just to hold everything in place. When we fit these, I like to make sure that that flat is upwards. It just makes things a lot easier for when you have to come and do the wheel bearing side of things, which I'll show you in a little while later. So we're very carefully put that over there. Just let that settle in. And we'll just move things into place until that's fitted. Okay, let's go and get some bolts. It's my technical man, cameraman, chief cook and bottle washer.
And bodger.
Prepared, and kettle bodger. Ah, now there's the thing. We could have been in real trouble today because unfortunately our kettle broke. And maybe we'll go into that in a little bit later. But anyway, we're now got a full kettle technician with us as well. Anyway, let's get back on to the important bit. Mind you, the kettle's important really because we need a cup of tea. That's the point. We'll have one in a minute when we finish this. Right, okay, once again, we've been meticulous about cleaning the threads inside this hub. We've cleaned the bolts, we've reapplied the Loctite, and now, excuse my absence, I'm just grabbing bolts from the side here. It's easier than leaving them up on the ramp because the problem is if they hit the floor, we've got to clean it all up again, and just a real big problem. So right, okay, I think what we're going to do to speed things up a little bit, we're going to use our little favourite tool, wherever it might be. Where have I put it? Ah, there it is. Right, need this appropriate socket as well, which is that one. 17mm that is, by the way. And we're going to just run that down on the low setting so that we can quickly run these bolts in, save a lot of time. There we go. Seems to. If you notice, I haven't put the lock ring on. Not the lock ring, the dust cover. So just give us a second. Sorry about that. These things do happen. Right, I'll just go back to where we were. Always try and tighten things up in the diagonal. It just spreads the load out. Right, those bolts are 17mm. I shall just feel that torque. Take it off, tighten it up. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Once more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've looked in the workshop manual and they are 65 Newton meters. We've preset the torque wrench and we're just going to show you now how we do it. And you'll listen to a click when the bolt stops turning. There you go. We'll do another one just to there. There we go. We could carry on and do all of these. So we've already done them up once, we're just checking the torque. That one a little bit more. Right, also the top swivel pin bearing, those are set again at 65 Newton meters. It's a little bit tricky to get the socket on this one because of that bracket. Right, that's that all torqued up. So the next stage is to prepare the hub that's on the bench over there, and we'll go across to that in just a minute. Okay, so it's time for us to put the one-shot grease into the swivel hub. I know we were going to do the wheel bearing, but we were getting a bit ahead of ourselves, so we decided we better do this before we get all this assembly made up, and then it's more difficult to show you with us inserting this. First of all, we've already snipped that off, and that will give us a nice little opening ready to squeeze the grease in. And you just simply feed that into the hole like that, get it in there sufficiently, start at the end of the tube like a roll of toothpaste basically, and you just start squeezing that down in until you get it all out. It does take a little bit of time. Right, there we go, we've got the majority of that. Just squeezing the last few drops down in. Once you get it down to about there, you can fold that over. Got the last little bit to go in. You've got to be careful because you've got to be able to let the air out as well. So as well as not trying to let any of this stuff escape.
So is it one of those per hub?
Yeah, one sachet per hub, yeah.